Video games can be a source of amazement and wonder, whether we're exploring vast open worlds, taking on enemies in action-packed fight sequences, or enjoying something more laid back. They really can be a joyous experience for all and give players a cheeky little dopamine boost which makes everyone feel great. Good stuff. Then, there are times when video games leave us feeling hopeless and force us to face tough decisions when no outcome seems to be a good one. Players are left with this sinking feeling that they've done something bad, harmed people, or just made the world a worse place. That feeling is guilt, and it's hard to shake off. For this list, we've trawled through the annals of gaming history to find occasions where our decisions left us feeling remorseful regardless of the choices we made. It goes without saying that we'll be dealing with major spoilers today, so you have been warned. I'm the ever-remorseful Ben from TripleJump, and here are 10 video game decisions that made us feel guilty. Number 10. The Civil War, The Elder Scrolls V, Skyrim. When it comes to war, it's sometimes unclear who is good and who is bad, as there may be elements of both on all sides. The same can be said of the Civil War in Skyrim, where there is some serious moral grey area when it comes to the parties involved. Players must choose between the Imperial Legion and the secessionist Stormcloaks, named after their leader Ulfric Stormcloak. Influenced by elven supremacists the Thalmor, the Imperials have outlawed the worship of Talos. This hasn't gone down very well with the Nords, amongst whom Talos is popular, and as such the Stormcloaks have risen to fight the Imperial oppression. The Stormcloaks aren't without fault, however, and carry severe prejudices against the elves. The Dragonborn ends up getting sucked into the conflict, and over the course of the game will slaughter hundreds as they assist their chosen side, with the outcome of the war having a great impact on the province of Skyrim. Jarls are unseated, NPCs will speak differently to the Dragonborn, and there are heavy casualties in battle, including important characters. Neither side is completely justified, nor are they without their negative aspects, leaving players constantly questioning whether they chose to back the right horse. Number 9. Good Cop, Bad Cop, The Wolf Among Us. Unsurprisingly, we have an entry on this list developed by Telltale Games, who are well known for their choice-based graphic adventures and the severe consequences that come with each decision. In The Wolf Among Us, Bigby Wolf, or Big Bad Wolf if you want to get serious about this, has plenty of tough decisions to make as the sheriff of Fabletown. After the murder of a local prostitute called Faith, the sheriff is forced to investigate. One of the lead suspects in the case is Woody, who was a known customer of Faith's and had been aggressive with her on her final night alive. If Bigby chooses to arrest Woody, then players will be presented with two options during the interrogation: good cop or bad cop. When choosing bad cop, a frustrated Bigby tortures Woody by burning a cigarette on his hand and smashing a bottle across his face. If players opt instead for good cop, Woody is upset about the murder and only able to give some bits of information, but not enough to satisfy the increasingly frustrated Bluebeard, who beats him and tortures him anyway. Woody may not be a good guy, but it's clear he didn't kill his lover, and an innocent, grieving man is beaten regardless of the player's actions, leaving them feeling shame for arresting him in the first place. Number 8. Choosing Kenny or Jane, The Walking Dead Season 2. More from Telltale now, this time with the end of Season 2 of The Walking Dead, which continues the story of poor Clementine, who has suffered so much in her short life. After the other members of the group run away with the truck and supplies, Clem is left with baby Alvin Jr., her old friend from Season 1 Kenny, and her new ally Jane. When Jane comes back inside without Alvin Jr. during a snowstorm, Kenny is upset and becomes violent towards her. This leaves Clementine in the uncomfortable position of either letting Kenny kill Jane or shooting Kenny dead. If she chooses to kill Kenny, he is understanding and seemingly relieved in his dying words, and players must witness Clementine losing another father figure. On top of that, the baby is heard crying in the car, as it turns out Jane deceived them both to show Kenny's true savage nature. Alternatively, if Clementine allows Kenny to kill Jane, she must witness his increasingly unstable state as well as lose Jane, who had also been good to her. In the tough world of The Walking Dead, every ally is an asset, and this kind of split-second decision-making leaves players in an impossible situation with no good outcome. Number 7. Nathaniel, Heavy Rain. From the mind of French auteur David Quage comes Heavy Rain, a game we've talked about ad nauseum here at TripleJump. Protagonist and sad dad Ethan has plenty of difficult decisions to make to get his son back, but today we're concentrating on a different playable character. In the chapter Nathaniel, FBI agent Naaman Jaden must investigate an unnerving flat full of crucifixes, candles, and a boatload of pills while searching for Nathaniel Williams, a suspect in the origami killer case. Norman concludes that Nathaniel is not the killer, just a deeply disturbed individual, but when Nathaniel returns home, the mood turns sour and he pulls a gun on Jaden's partner, Blake. After defusing the situation, Blake goes to arrest Nathaniel, but the latter's quick hand movement gives the player the option to shoot him. It turns out he was only pulling out a crucifix to exorcise the demon he perceives to be inside Blake, so Jaden will realize he shot an innocent man if he chose to pull the trigger. Not shooting is probably the preferable choice, but Nathaniel is still arrested and presumably won't get the help he needs. On top of that, Blake will give the player grief for not protecting him, saying he could have been killed. You just can't win. Number 6. Who to save in the quarantine section. Cloudpunk. When time is of the essence and multiple lives are in your hands, it's impossible to decide who should live or die. Cloudpunk's Rainier finds this out the hard way when the fate of 6 individuals is left up to her and she must decide who to save from a toxic leak in a section of the city of Nivalis. Rainier is granted special access to the quarantine zone and must talk to each character, bearing in mind that there are only 3 available seats in her car but 6 individuals to choose from. To many, the Doctor and the Professor are the obvious choices, even if the latter likely caused the toxic leak. Additionally, there are 2 androids, one who is a long-serving army veteran with no family, whereas the other has only been in service for 18 hours. As for who Rainier should condemn to death, there's a racist CEO who took his position thanks to his father's wealth, as well as the condescending Mrs. Octavius Butler. Though the answer may seem obvious, they're still sentient life forms, and no matter who the player chooses to save, 3 people or androids will be condemned to die, and that is a heavy burden to bear. Number 5. Who to kill. Grand Theft Auto 4. Part of what makes GTA 4 so memorable and allows it to stand the test of time is player freedom, introducing the need for players to make some difficult choices which affect the in-game world. Deputy Police Commissioner Francis McCreary requests that Nico kill his brother Derek, saying that it would be for the good of the community. Derek is a known criminal, drug addict, and alcoholic, but is known as the most honest of the McCreary brothers and is friendly with Nico. Also, does he deserve to die for such vices? Sounds to me like he might need some help. Francis, meanwhile, is a crooked cop, and it turns out he only wants Derek dead because the latter plans to reveal this, which would end Francis's dreams of becoming police commissioner and land him in a whole heap of trouble. Even though Nico has no choice and must kill one of the brothers, we can't help but feel torn about this decision. Francis may have a questionable sense of justice and means of achieving it, but surely the exposure of his activity and a chance to atone for his sins would have been preferable. Either way, Nico and the player must live with murdering a friend and further breaking up the McCreary family. Number 4. Tranquility Lane. Fallout 3. I present to you now a philosophical question. Is it better to let someone live through eternal torture or put them out of their misery? As part of Fallout 3's main quest, players must visit Vault 112 and sit in the Tranquility Lounger within. The player will then enter a simulation called Tranquility Lane, where the dwellers of Vault 112 have been imprisoned for 200 years by pre-war scientist Dr. Stanislaus Braun. The simulations were originally intended as an experiment for human stasis, but Braun quickly became bored and used this technology as his own personal torture chamber. Things are more sinister than the idyllic setting would have you believe, as a child called Betty orders the player to carry out increasingly cruel tasks, from making Timmy cry to breaking up a marriage and even murdering the residents while dressed in a slasher costume. Betty, who is actually Braun in disguise, would then allow the player to leave, along with their father who had been trapped in the simulation as a dog. There is an alternative. A security console failsafe is accessible, but it would kill everyone except for Braun, who is trapped there for eternity. It's hard to say which is the lesser of the two evils, as the player would be responsible for multiple deaths, but wouldn't leave them to suffer after 200 years of torture be crueler. Number 3. Gaetan. The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt. Let's face it, we are all capable of flying off the handle sometimes and either doing or saying something that we regret later. Usually that involves calling someone a rude name for stealing your favourite mug, and hopefully nothing quite on the same level as what we see from Gaetan in The Witcher 3. When Geralt investigates Honorton after seeing a contract about a beast there, he finds many bodies and only one survivor, a girl called Millie. Gaetan, a witcher from the School of the Cat, explains that he completed the Beast of Honorton contract, but was swindled by the Elderman, then was attacked by him and the villagers. Gaetan lost his cool and killed everyone except for Millie, who reminded him of his sister. Geralt then must choose between killing a fellow Witcher for his crimes or letting him live. After all, who is the Butcher of Blaviken to judge? This ethical conundrum actually remains one of the biggest debates among fans of the Witcher series and doesn't really have a simple answer. But either way, the player will feel some remorse. Just calm down with a nice cup of tea next time, lads. Wait a second. Alright, who stole my mug this time? Number 2. Lady Boyle's Last Party. Dishonored. Sometimes a punishment seems rather harsh, especially when the victim hasn't necessarily done all that much wrong. In video games, we must often chastise those who have misbehaved, and Dishonored is full of awful forms of retribution, though mostly for bad people. In the case of Lady Boyle, her only crime is guilt by association. She is not only the mistress, but also the financier of Hiram Burrows, the mastermind behind the assassination plot against the Empress. While this doesn't reflect well on Lady Boyle, there is no proof that she had any knowledge of the plot and is for all intents and purposes innocent, though that doesn't prevent her from finding her way onto Corvo's list. Attending her party, Corvo must work out which of the 3 Boyle sisters is his target, as they're each wearing the same costume but in 3 different colours. I suppose if you're a no-nonsense kind of guy, gal or other, you could just kill all 3 sisters and totally ignore that pesky investigation rubbish. Alternatively, players can hand the unconscious body of Lady Boyle to Lord Brigsby, a man who claims he has always loved her, but seems more like a stalker. Ugh, being forced to marry that nasty little creep is possibly a fate worse than death. Number 1. Every Choice. This War of Mine. Polish developer 11-Bit Studios sought to recreate the experience of civilians living in the middle of a war zone in This War of Mine. Players must manage their resources, go scavenging at night, and deal with NPC encounters. Every decision has a consequence, and often they negatively affect somebody. Strangers frequently ask for help, and players must decide whether to give up their precious resources if they have them, or let the people suffer. Either way, the consequences can be dire, and death is never far away. Sometimes desperation kicks in and players are forced to steal from the sick or vulnerable, which can result in the deaths of those people. Oftentimes, players must take a more direct approach and will have to kill. Even those we may perceive as bad guys will call out for help when attacked, humanizing them just a little too much. If the player feels no remorse for their actions, the characters in the game certainly will. Being in a bad mood can affect what they do, especially if they are depressed, and if characters are broken, they will no longer be responsive to players' commands, staying in bed until things improve or they just die. God, all this guilt is getting a bit much for me. I think I need a cup of tea and a kitten to cuddle. Bring me the kitten.